I'm Fatheree.
This is Dave.
I'm Chris.
This is Brian.
And this is Tex-Trek.
Engage.
So welcome back to the Starship Texas for the 71st installment of the Tex-Trek podcast, the home of Star Trek fandom from deep in the heart of Texas, where we talk all about Star Trek, old and new. And tonight, Dave and I are joined by Brian, and we also have our guest, Chris, who's back for the first time in a long time. He talked the Star Trek Enterprise premiere episode Broken Bow with us.
Mm-hmm. Oh man!
When we were counting down the premiere episodes, getting ready for Discovery.
Did you watch Discovery?
How'd that Discovery show turn out? No, I'm teasing.
It bombed.
Oh, that's okay. Well, it's not on TV, so I couldn't find it.
It got canceled before it made it to the air, like some people predicted on the internet.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about it, but it's just people talking about fanfic.
Oh, okay.
Actually, some people do approach it as if it's that, but they're cranky pants.
But tonight we're actually talking about not recent Trek. We're talking about a movie from 35 years ago.
1983?
1984.
84.
Star Trek III: The Search for Spock.
Mm-hmm.
But Dave needs a search for a calculator because he can't do simple math.
Are you sure it's not 83?
I'm positive it's 84.
All right.
1984, the best year for movies ever, actually. Like, that is the single best year of movies of all time. Is 1984. That had Beverly Hills Cop, that had The Karate Kid, that had Ghostbusters.
I think I prefer 82, but this is kind of drifting off topic.
It's a valid argument.
So,
but yeah, this movie was, of course, the sequel to the ever popular, highly acclaimed Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan.
Right, so big shoes to fill. Wrath of Khan was beloved in its own time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the big critical success of the Star Trek franchise early on in the movies. And Nicholas Meyer did not want to return to write or direct because he didn't want to deal with the resurrection of Spock. He said, like, no, I killed that character. I don't want to do a movie about him coming to life. So,
but they had already convinced him to sneak in the scenes that set it up in Trek 2.
Well, no, that was done against his will, as we talked about last week.
I thought that he acquiesced, I guess, eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
like after the success of it in the theater or something.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
all right, I guess it
They threw some money at him.
yeah.
And probably, no.
But no, instead, with Star Trek 3, it was directed by Leonard Nimoy, who said that he'd been wanting to direct for a long time, and we know that they were so worried about him coming back for Star Trek 2 that they wrote the death of his character in hopes to get him in one last time.
And then I guess he enjoyed the ride so much.
Well, the way that Nimoy approached it was he said, I'll do it if you let me direct.
Right.
And I can't remember if it was Nimoy or Nicholas Meyer himself, but in an interview with one of them, I remember them telling the story of Leonard Nimoy was talking to Nicholas Meyer, and he said, you know, I want to direct the movie. I'm going to tell them I'm not going to do it unless they let me direct. And Nicholas Meyer asked Nimoy, oh, are you serious? Are you really going to like stick to your guns on that? And Nimoy is like, yeah, I think so. And then Nicholas Meyer's like, yeah, they'll give it to you. They'll cave. Do it.
Yeah.
So,
and just the idea of Nimoy getting advice from Nicholas Myers when you remember how young Myers was at that point, it's just...
Well, that just shows how much respect they all had for Nicholas Meyer. But...
Yes, they clearly liked him.
Nimoy was the first actor in the series to become a director?
Yes, although it was supposed to be Shatner. In season 3 of the original series, Shatner was supposed to start directing, and in fact, the next episode they were going to shoot after Turnabout Intruder would have been the first directed by Shatner, but the show got canceled, and they stopped season 3 a little short.
Oh.
And so Shatner never had to direct his episode.
I can see that, well, season 3 is a lost cause. Sure, let Shatner direct something. How bad can it be?
Somewhere there's an alternate...
Hold that thought.
He hung on to that season 3 worthy plot for years, waiting for a chance to use it.
Two decades later, he did get a shot to go from the captain's chair to the director's chair.
Why, in just a few weeks, I'm sure we'll be talking about it.
So stick around in a couple of weeks, we'll talk about that little gem of a movie. But in the meantime, the Search for Spock, it was written by Harve Bennett, who pretty much shepherded the Star Trek franchise through movies 2 through 5. And I really enjoy this movie. It's often kind of frowned upon as one of like the sucky odd number movies. You know, there's that rule like the evens are good, the odds are bad. But
yeah. That's kind of a bit of a... To be fair, that's a sort of cheap criticism. It's funny, kind of, but there's... I've never put too much stock in that. But, yeah, it's included in the... For you know, there's some broad truth to it, I guess.
I mean, it's hard to look good when you're sandwiched between Star Trek 2 and Star Trek 4. But...
Did you say at some point that you feel you like it more than Trek 2?
I think I do like it more. I don't think it's as good, but I do like it more.
Whoa!
But
Okay.
We'll get into why.
You sicken me.
And all the details. But I'm just gonna run us through like a quick transwarp summary of the movie.
Let's just hope Scotty doesn't gum it up.
So we open in the aftermath, or should I say after wrath of Khan.
Oh!
Spock is dead, Kirk is sad, and the battle-damaged Enterprise is limping home to Earth. The instant planet created by the Genesis device at the end of Star Trek II is being studied by Kirk's son David Marcus and Sarek on board the USS Grissom. But after the crew reach Earth, they learn that Spock might not be as dead as we thought. Some security footage from the Enterprise engine room reveals that Spock mind-melded with an unconscious Dr. McCoy before sacrificing himself to repair the ship. That mind meld transferred Spock's katra, what the Vulcans call everything that is not of the body. But basically all of Spock's mind, memories, and essence, his soul, if you will, the good doctor, becomes a bit of a Spock-Bones hybrid, and is sent away to what's called the Federation Funny Farm.
I think not officially, but...
Back on planet Genesis, Sarek and David find a resurrected Spock. His corpse was transformed by the Genesis Matrix into a living, breathing Vulcan child who is aging rapidly. In a desperate attempt to fix both Spock and McCoy, Kirk and the crew steal the Enterprise from Starfleet and haul ass to the Genesis planet. Unfortunately, the Klingon Kruge also has plans for Genesis. He also shows up at planet Genesis and aims to learn the secrets of the Genesis technology to use as a weapon. His Klingon shenanigans lead to the destruction of the Grissom, the murder of David, and the sacrifice of the Enterprise herself.
Oh no.
Kirk is able to defeat Kruge in an epic old-school TOS-style hand-to-hand combat smackdown. And he defeats him just in time as the planet ends up falling apart. The Genesis Matrix is unstable. Turns out it doesn't even work. But Kirk escapes on the Klingon ship with Spock's living body, which conveniently has stopped aging now that he looks like Leonard Nimoy. Spock's mind is a total blank, though. Bones still has all of Spock's marbles in his head. The crew warp over to planet Vulcan, where a mystic ceremony is performed and transfers all of Spock's katra from Dr. McCoy into the new Spock body. Spock is resurrected, and the crew celebrates, and the adventure continues. So, this movie opens up with the flashback of Spock's sacrifice in the Wrath of Khan and then his little funeral ceremony. So one thing that I often don't bring up when I talk about like my introduction to these movies is I watched Star Trek 2, Star Trek 3, and Star Trek 4 all on like the same weekend.
Oh, interesting.
But I put in the wrong VHS tape first, so the first thing I actually saw was like the Spock death in the beginning of like Star Trek 3.
Little Fatheree wasn't too bright.
Well, no, what had happened was someone else had rented these movies that I rented, and they'd actually they must have got 2 and 3 both.
The
because
cases
they
were
were
swapped?
swapped in the cases.
Oh, man.
But I had conveniently rented both of them, so I still had both of them.
Right.
So I figured out what was going on when I saw the Klingons, because I knew Klingons were in the third movie from like the VHS cases.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then I rewound it and put Star Trek 2 in and watched that. But,
Okay.
That is a rough introduction, unfortunately.
That doesn't.
I didn't mind. I still had a good time.
Yeah.
I still liked watching them. But the first time I saw Spock die was actually in the opening of Star Trek 3.
There's slightly abbreviated flashback to it.
When my first exposure was, actually seen 1 a bunch of times before I became a Star Trek fan as a kid, and I'd seen 2 once. And then I became a Star Trek fan, started watching the old 60s series show on reruns after Doctor Who on Saturdays. And I'd watched, 10 or 11 of them. I was really getting into it. And I went over to a friend's house, and he'd just gotten Star Trek 3 on VHS for his birthday that day. It was his birthday party. So we put that in, and we watched it. And just the idea that Kirk had a son was shocking. And then the son died, and I felt so bad.
Interesting.
Shatner's totally sold it for this middle school student that was me watching it. I was like, oh my God. And then they blew up the Enterprise. Like, oh my God. And I was just traumatized. Everyone else was laughing and happy and eating cake, and I was like,
Yeah.
Right, the emotional impact hit you.
honestly, I was for days, I was like, just kind of couldn't stop thinking about the death of David and the destruction of the Enterprise. And I'd just gotten into Star Trek like a few months early, in the last 6 months. So it was
So that's
really,
like TOS Star Trek?
yeah, TOS Star Trek, right?
Where almost the status quo almost never changes.
Yeah.
So the movie stuff had that big impact that, well, they wanted it to.
Yeah, and that really, and to this day, I still feel incredible sadness, and that's just kind of etched into this movie for me when David dies, and I still think that Kirk's reaction when he finds out David is dead, and all of that is still one of my all-time favorite Shatner moments.
Totally.
Chris, do you remember your first encounter with this movie?
No idea. I remember going to see Star Trek 4 in the theaters, but Star Trek 3, I probably rented it. I think I did see it before Star Trek 2 as well. But I was so little that it didn't really have the impact. I was kind of more just like, wait, what?
Right.
Yeah, so...
You're in space?
Yeah, this is crazy. No, I do remember watching it, though, and as a kid, the scenes that stood out were not the scenes that would, like... I think one of the main scenes I remember as a kid, in Star Trek 2, it was the earwigs.
Yeah.
In Star Trek 3, it was the
parasites.
The parasite thing. And, of course, Star Trek 4, it was whales, but,
hey, there's the Next Generation episode called Conspiracy that if you're into the Trek creepy crawlies, you're really gonna dig.
Yeah. Conspiracy. Okay, I'll keep that. Now, I will point out this. So Spock dies in the second movie.
Right.
And he gets his whole movie searching for him. David dies in this movie. They don't really do anything for him.
Well,
it's very sad.
Kirk says goodbye, David, as they leave.
Yeah.
The Genesis
They don't go back in
loose
time. They don't try to transfer his Katra. Okay, I know he's not.
Doesn't have a Katra. They only go back in time to fix the present, not the past.
Yeah.
Kirk found out about the proto-matter thing, and he was like...
Yeah.
I will say...
I don't want to be... I can't believe my son would actually cheat. That was shocking to him.
Coming from the ultimate shooter.
Yeah.
It would not come. It would not be one of the Tex-Trek movie reviews without us bringing up the novelization of the film. And I will say the novelization of 3 and 4 spends a lot more time dealing with the fallout of David, and even 6. The novelization of 6 gets into it to some degree as well.
Well, and I will say, though, that his response when he died, yes, obviously I'm making kind of light of it here, it was pretty powerful.
Yeah, I'm just saying there are other scenes where they grapple with this particular issue, so if you...
Yeah. I do get, by the way, on a practical level, he was effectively a guest star in the movies, and Spock was the venerable favorite from the original series, so yeah, that's... you get that if you're locked in like that, if you're a main player.
Dave, please tell me that one of us saw the Star Trek movies in the correct order. I believe you saw 2 and 3 both in
I did
theaters.
technically. I just wasn't a Star Trek fan until the third one, so I didn't really know what those other movies were.
Yeah, I saw it in the theater in the correct order.
All right, yay!
But here's the other part of that question. Do you remember your first time watching this?
I don't have the precise memories of this that I do of Trek 2, but I do remember I was like really, really hyped for it, and I really loved 3 when I saw it. And I think at the time I might have liked it more than 2 because of its kind of more, despite the sad things that happened, it kind of had a more adventuresome angle. And it occurs to me that in a lot of ways it's the first Trek movie where they really take all the supporting crew and everybody and they're really treated as a family. Like that's become such a common way to lens them. But even in 2, it's the core trio are for sure treated that way. Mm-hmm. But never did it feel so strongly with including all the Scotty and Uhura and Chekhov and everybody else.
Yeah, you could... In Star Trek 2, if a bunch of those actors had decided not to come back for whatever reason, it wouldn't have changed the script hardly a beat. Right. Star Trek 3, if Nichelle Nichols hadn't come back, that whole Mr. Adventure scene would not be there. And you can say that Sulu helping to break out McCoy and flipping that guy and Don't Call Me Tiny would not be there if George Takei hadn't signed up.
And I'm pretty sure that scenes like that are what made people want George Takei to have his own ship and started to really get him on that road to being a real, kind of a notable Trek character in his own right.
I think the fans have been reading novels about them for years by this point and had already bought into this idea, but it was the first time that idea made it onto the screen, I think, at least in the movies.
And I think I was also really excited to see Klingons, to be honest. They were so... it felt like an update of the, tough but guileful Klingons of the show.
So this movie did more than anything else, really, to define everything Klingon after this.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of credit has to go to Leonard Nimoy, who had tremendous influence on creating how we think of Vulcans. He came up with a lot of the specific things like the mind meld. I think the Vulcan nerve pinch was definitely his idea. I think the script called for a karate chop. and Spock...
Very 60s.
Nimoy thought Spock would do something a little bit
understated
less
or
crude.
Yeah, less overt.
And the Vulcan hand jive came from Nimoy. I think even like Live Long and Prosper was actually Nimoy's.
Wow.
So this guy had tremendous influence on shaping the Vulcans as well as the Klingons in this movie he directed. Undeniably, the 2 most iconic alien races of Star Trek. 2 of the most iconic alien races in all science fiction.
Mm-hmm. Right. It's another one of those ones where even people who don't know Trek, there's a reasonable chance they know about Vulcans and Klingons.
Yeah, everyone's heard of those.
Yep.
But the first act of this movie, I guess, there's really 3 different storylines going on. We have the Klingons, we have Sarek and David.
Yep.
And then we have Kirk and company back at Space Dock and back at Earth. So we can talk about all 3 of those, but
there's like Klingon evil, exploration, and a heist story.
Yeah.
And then they all kind of like dovetail together halfway through the movie. But let's just start off with Kirk and the crew, on the Enterprise when they make their return trip.
Actually, just to rewind for just 1 second, the flashbacks to Trek 2, I thought it immediately kind of grounds the movie in a kind of an emotional quality. And it sets up the scene that you're about to talk about, which is their arrival in Space Dock,
Before that, when we have Kirk's log entry.
Right.
And it does, yes, that long sequence from the flashbacks to Kirk's log entry does set a very somber tone for the movie. Mm-hmm. Although, I do have to say, when you watch this back-to-back with the Wrath of Khan now, it is a little bit distracting how some things on the set look a little different, and I think...
We're talking about the changed ship damage and stuff
like that? Yeah, there's some of the consoles, some of the turbolift controls are a little different. And Shatner does not have as good of a girdle in this movie. As he looks a little plumper in the Maroon Monster here than he did in The Wrath of Khan.
I have to just quick ask, Chris, are you aware of the term Maroon Monster?
I'm not aware of the term maroon monster.
Fatheree always uses it. It is a colloquial term for the red uniforms of these movies.
Yeah, of the TOS movies.
Yep.
Another weird thing is that Uhura suddenly has Jerry curls after Spock's funeral. Like she went
You
to...
can change.
She went to the funeral and
The
then
Genesis planet revived her hair, too.
it gave her some curl activator and a perm.
Yes.
But
That's a little known side effect. It's in the book. I'm sure it's in the book.
Yeah.
in spite of all that, I love the opening of this movie, and
Yes.
I love the stuff with McCoy and Spock's quarters.
So just, I'm sure we'll talk about this more as we go along, but I feel like DeForest Kelley gets to do some really great work in this
Yes.
one.
Yes.
I think somebody pointed this out in like a tweet in our questions to see what people thought about this. That with Spock somewhat out of the picture for much of the movie, it gave he had that opportunity then to kind of take up the slack. Mm-hmm. Weirdly, as a partial Spock sometimes.
Yeah.
That scene where Kirk goes into into Spock's quarters.
I don't know if did they actually use Leonard Nimoy's voice, or was it just DeForest Kelley
Imitating him?
Because it really sounded like Spock to me. But maybe, I don't know.
I think it created, however they did it, it created the exact kind of slightly dreamlike atmosphere that I think they wanted the audience to have, which is like, you're where Kirk is, where it's like, for a split second, you're like, wait, is Spock somehow already there? And you're like, and it's so you get the drama of his exact reaction.
I still like the idea that McCoy can rip the doors open on Spock's the locked doors on Spock's quarters. I'm like, whoa, okay, he is a doctor, but he is also a Jaws of life.
Doctors probably have a security code that can override.
No, but if you look at the door when they go in, it's not even quite lined up right. It's like opened like this.
There's I think it's
been yanked open.
I think it's more urban legend than anything, but that the moms lifting cars off their kids because of adrenaline. Yeah. He got some Vulcan adrenaline going.
Yeah. And then we do get the ship back to space dock, and this is part of what I really enjoy about this movie is that they're able to spend a little bit more money than the Wrath of Khan. They had a little bit of a bigger budget in this one, so we got some incredible models like Space Dock and the Excelsior, and stuff that the later movies would all use.
I was enamored of the Excelsior as a kid.
Yeah.
To me, it was I wanted it to go ahead and them to graduate and to get that ship.
I think that was from what I understand loosely the idea when they blew up the Enterprise was to foreshadow there's this other ship we can get in the next movie, and we're going to kind of lay the groundwork for that so that there's something there. I think that was actually the plan, because otherwise the whole Excelsior thing really doesn't seem to have a lot of payoff.
Did they decide not to because everybody kept in the movie shit talks it like Scotty?
That was, I heard it was a combination of the fact that they spent too much time calling it a piece of shit, and fans didn't like the Excelsior and were against the idea that was going to replace the Enterprise.
A lot of fans disliked it.
So,
but the ILM boys loved it because it was such an easier model to shoot. Because the motion picture refit Enterprise was a monster that was terrible to work with, and they hated doing special effects shots with it.
Why was it so troublesome? It seems like they broadly have the same...
I don't know the details, but I have heard numerous interviews where they complained about it being a nightmare to work with. So it was something with the wiring, I think, and the lighting
not
and
like
stuff.
sort of like the aesthetics of it when filmed, like it shoots badly from certain angles.
No, it actually looks beautiful from all angles, but I think it was the electrics and stuff were not wired properly.
More and more practical stuff.
I see.
Mm-hmm. And they didn't really, we don't have time to cut it apart and or budget to cut it apart and replace it. If it kind of works, we're making it work.
I guess as long as Sulu eventually got it.
Yes.
But yes, the Excelsior they built, and so it was built with more modern tech and stuff inside it.
We also see a reuse of the Kirk apartment set, which is one of the best sets of the Star Trek movies.
Yeah. It looks futuristic, but kind of cool. I mean, it's got character to it.
So do y'all know the thing that worked out with that shot of everyone having the toast to absent friends? Mm-hmm. How if you actually freeze frame the movie there and look at all those characters, it just so happens that those are all the living cast members of the original series. the people missing there are Leonard Nimoy and DeForest Kelley and James Doohan.
So that is in the this exact moment in time.
Yeah,
It's all the living ones.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
yeah.
Huh.
In a few more years, that coincidence probably is not going to work out so well.
Yeah.
You have a different scene from a different film or episode.
Yeah.
So.
Who's next?
Oh no!
There will be no Star Trek Deadpool.
No.
Oh, and we get to see Yeoman Rand return very briefly.
Yeah, she's watching as they dock, right?
Yeah, I like that though because it kind of really like enforces the idea of like Kirk and his crew of the legendary Starfleet officers and them returning from this crisis with Khan and how people it makes them feel big and larger than life to have a character staring up at the ship returning home.
Yeah.
The ship works as a cool. I mean, it's obvious, but it works as a cool metaphor for how scarred everybody is in this. Like everybody is damaged from it.
Yeah, even though some of that battle damage never occurred in the Wrath of Khan, but
It looks cool though.
it does look cool. It looks.
The journey
gorgeous.
back was rough too.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And everyone got shore leave afterwards, except Scotty, because Scotty's so good at his job.
And he got a promotion.
Yeah, that's why you should never be that good at your job.
No.
Well, to be fair, Scotty did get some sort of revenge for that.
That's true.
But
That's a good
but he
point.
didn't. It wasn't like when they promoted Kirk from captain to admiral, and he suddenly didn't get to do what he wanted. He was still chief of engineering. It was just a new hot
Well,
ship.
he was captain of engineering.
Captain
which
of
was
engineering,
a weird,
but whatever. He's
weird
still
term.
probably doing the engine. He's in the engine room when we see him on Excelsior.
It's a
I'm sure
really-
it's basically the same job.
I'm gonna throw out a quick pet peeve here. This movie started the tradition of Scotty being a little bit cranky about the new technology, and I never really loved that. It became a sort of thing he jokes about.
I have a
It feels
retcon
like-
that'll fix it for you.
It feels like the sort of thing that does happen to a lot of people as
It's
they
true.
get older, so I'm kind of okay with it.
It's only
why
that
he
I
doesn't
like
it.
Well, go ahead.
Because he knows that the transwarp engine won't work, and no one would listen to him. And they built the Excelsior, this new transwarp drive, and the whole time Scotty's like, no, it's a piece of shit, it's not going to work. And they never listen to him, and then he's eventually proven right, and that's why transwarp isn't used throughout the fleet going forward.
Yeah.
That's not in the movie.
It's not in the movie, but...
It is pretty easy to infer.
Yeah, no, that makes it work a little
bit.
bit better. But like, they also kind of go on to show Scotty becoming a bit of a cranky old man in the Next Generation episode, which.
And the Excelsior design, aside from Transwarp Drive, becomes incredibly prolific. Probably one of Starfleet's most successful designs ever.
Well,
Yes.
I guess that's why Scotty's so bitter
Yeah.
in Next Generation.
Yeah.
It's like they built how many of those things?
Yeah, Starfleet loves the Excelsior and loves the Miranda.
Yes,
for the
yes.
next 8 decades after this.
Yes.
But we do get that really cool comedic bit where Dr. McCoy goes into the bar to try to get the flight to Genesis.
From Ferengi Yoda.
Yes. Yeah, no, that scene was so much... I don't know, it's like, did they just watch Star Wars right before it? And they were like, we should throw in a cantina scene where they try to get a ship.
It worked. The idea that McCoy has a bar he goes to makes absolute
like it.
sense.
No,
the idea that the bar would be filled with aliens in Star Trek land makes absolute sense.
And
It totally does.
Yeah.
High-res vector graphic World War II plane dogfighting.
Yeah.
And Tribbles.
No,
Troubles,
yeah, that's right, there was. No, I like the scene, but it definitely was like,
Genesis. Look, I like that. I like that alien actually.
Yes.
When I rewatched it, I was like, his particular word jumble style I liked more than I remembered.
Yeah.
It's fun. So
Their whole, when is now, where, how much is where. It's fun.
I always loved this. I loved it as a kid. It made me laugh. I loved the line, how can you be deaf with ears like that? There's not going to be any damn permits. And
How can you get a permit for a damn thing that's
and
illegal?
as much as they're complaining about people say it's too Star Wars, when he tries to find an illegal smuggler who will smuggle him into forbidden places, he can't because the Federation is filled with nice people. And he can't.
I do love when he
That's a good point.
Yes.
when the security guy comes over to talk him down, and he mentions trying to get a ship, and the alien smuggler guy's like,
what I like the most is the Spock Bones fusion, or Spones, as I call it. But when he says when the cop offers McCoy a ride home, and he has the line where's the logic in offering me a ride home when I'm trying to charter a space flight, you idiot? And then he tries to do the Vulcan nerve pinch and it doesn't work.
He just like grabs him.
Yeah. Some of the characterization of Starfleet in this gets a little frustrating to me. It's the beginning, or a continuation maybe, but the beginning of the really leaning into Starfleet as a bunch of either hawks or buzzkill types.
I wouldn't say they're hawkish in this, but
they're bureaucrats.
They're
Hawks or bureaucrats,
Yeah.
But I do appreciate that both the guy who was going to take McCoy home and the is it an admiral that Kirk talks to later to try and get permission to go?
Admiral Maru.
Admiral Maru. They both feel like they've got some empathy going on. They feel more like how I want Starfleet to feel. Then Styles comes along and ruins it all.
With the exception of Captain Styles, a lot of the Starfleet people in this movie are way less dickish.
That's true.
Than people were in the original series sometimes when they met Federation officials or admirals.
Yeah.
Right.
There was definitely, that's the problem with, if you have somebody in authority over your heroes, they have to either be, they have to be incompetent or evil.
Right.
Because otherwise they'd end up solving the problem for the heroes.
I've got your back every time.
Yeah.
It's not super great drama.
Yes. So that is why Starfleet admirals are all terrible. And when Kirk becomes an admiral, he has all of his problems and he doesn't get his mojo back completely except when he's back as a captain.
One of the reasons why I really like this movie is that it has kind of an expansion of Starfleet and what it shows the audience. And having space stock, having an admiral other than Admiral Kirk.
Yeah.
The previous two movies, Kirk's the highest ranking person we see.
Yeah. Though they talk about
they mention
Nagura.
Admiral Nagura in the motion picture, and we never see him. Also, the comedy in this movie, I think this movie has a lot of really good comedy that works, and I think you kind of need that with coming out of the tragedy of the Wrath of Khan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Nimoy was very aware that these characters are fun, and that was something he was very aware of, and something he felt was being missed, even with Star Trek II to some degree, and something he clearly emphasizes going forward.
Yeah, there's some really great scenes in Trek II, but like McCoy talking to Kirk on his birthday is some pretty heavy stuff.
Yeah.
There's like acidic humor in that, and this has some real humor. To some degree, I could feel him I felt like, I don't know, I don't want to say like quite dumbing it down a bit because there's broad humor in a piece of the action and Trouble with Tribbles, so there is for sure a tradition of that. Maybe it's more that, like Mr. Adventure and stuff like that, I was like, okay, we get it, he's a jerk.
Oh, come on, that's Nichelle Nichols' big scene. Please don't say that they should have taken that out.
No, but I might have changed it so that he wasn't like every line that he said dripping with like I want to like pants this dude or whatever.
We have to feel good when he gets locked in a closet.
I agree.
He has to be a jerk.
I think they maybe leaned into it as much as you can. I'm not old like you.
Yeah.
That guy was just like a perfect like 80s movie.
It was, yeah.
An 80s D-bag.
Like he needs to be like a bully at someone's high school, or like a really cocky guy in the military, or like there's so many different like 80s movies I feel like this guy should have been in. And I look at his IMDb page and he's like he didn't do much at all, but
Styles,
Scott McGinnis, the name of the actor.
The guy playing Captain Styles could have been his rich dad in some other 80s movie.
That's perfect. Let's talk about like the jailbreak and the Enterprise heist.
Yep.
We do have that scene, I guess, where Kirk goes to Admiral Maru after visiting with Sarek, learning about the Katra, and he is like dining in that restaurant, and Admiral Maru is like telling him, no way, Jim, we're not gonna let you do this.
Right? That is that Genesis has become like this political firestorm kind of thing, right?
Yeah. Well, Starfleet, as far as all the other powers are concerned, Starfleet can blow up entire planets with one torpedo.
Right.
Yeah, and apparently shields and all of that probably appear to make no difference. I can totally see why all the other powers would whoa!
The Klingons will have something very more specific to say about it in the next movie.
Yes.
There's this good bit of of acting and the way it was shot with Shatner kind of like after he's been told no, where he's kind of staring off in the distance, and you can tell he's not listening to this lecture this other admiral is giving him. And like at this moment, like he already knows, he has zero doubt in his mind. He's going to steal the Enterprise and go fix Spock and fix McCoy. Yeah. And it's even really, now that I think about it, it's from before this scene. It's from when he's visiting with Sarek in his apartment, and they review the footage of the Enterprise and
very well edited and shot security camera footage.
Yeah, edited and shot by Nicholas Meyer.
Yes.
There's this moment in there where up until this point, Kirk has just been like miserable and depressed, and I mean he saw his best friend die.
Yeah,
and it's like at this moment when he gets a mission from Sarek.
Right.
When Sarek is saying, you got to do this to help Dr. McCoy, you got to do this to help my son. And Kirk says, I will, I swear. And you see it in his face, like he snaps out of that grief. And now he's back into like action Captain Kirk mode.
Yeah, well, especially once you look at the whole arc of the films, Kirk is a doer. And if he can't be doing, he doesn't know what to do with himself.
Yep.
So
kind of like Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah, totally. No rest time for this guy.
Yeah.
I like.
I don't know if Kirk shoots up heroin when he's not doing stuff, but
just Romulan ale.
Yeah.
But so he has the team together, and they go to get McCoy out of the Federation Funny Farm.
Yep.
Kind of like how when Spock was locked up there in season 2 of Discovery.
Yeah.
And they have the other really funny joke that always makes me laugh when Kirk goes up to McCoy and he does the Vulcan hand jive and he says, how many fingers am I holding up?
Yes.
I think
that's not so damn funny.
The better one comes a moment later when he says, you're suffering from a Vulcan mind meld. That green-blooded son of a bitch. It's his revenge for all the arguments he lost.
I love that.
Oh, God, that's amazing. That is like the best McCoy line in all Star Trek.
I use that line all the time when I'm talking about my friend Trenton, who's appeared on Tex-Trek a couple of times. But me and him, when we were younger, we were roommates for a little bit, and we would have a bunch of heated discussions about various topics. And so whenever he's not doing something like these days that I want him to do, or like he's like disagreeing with me or something, I always tell him like, "This is your revenge for all those arguments you lost."
There's when I was making notes on this as I was watching it, I jotted down I feel like 10 or 12 lines in it that stuck out at me. And I didn't remember that it had so many quotable lines before.
Yeah, no, there's some beautiful gems in this movie.
Written by Harve Bennett.
Yeah. Regardless of whether you think the whole works, there are definitely some beautiful moments that are stunning scattered throughout this film.
And speaking of Harve Bennett, like one of his favorite lines that he wrote, and this came from being a guy who did TV for so many years and couldn't use this on TV, but when he has Scotty get on the turbo shaft and up your shaft.
Yeah. I thought that was a little goofy. That's just me.
Well, it works because we all dislike Styles, and he was just talking shit about the Enterprise.
It's true. Styles gets a pretty hard comeuppance in the scene to come. But yes, that heist in general is a fantastic, energetic sequence. James Horner's music has that energy going on to it.
Yeah, it is probably the best part of the film, really.
Yeah.
Certainly,
I think that's probably where, if the audience was not on board before, you got to get on board for "Don't Call Me Tiny."
Yeah. But when they're actually like backing the ship up through
the I have to ask. I mean, Starfleet personnel being a little bit racist potentially. That doesn't rub people.
What was racist?
Asian people being small is a racist
I thought
thing.
it was just because that guy was huge.
I actually, you said that makes sense. But I just took it as he was just a tall guy threatening.
Yeah, well, there's another
jerk.
layer to it, certainly,
that
I think Asian people would pick up on. And yes, Sulu kicks his ass, so yay for no racism. But,
and George Takei didn't want to do that. He didn't want to be called tiny. He didn't want Sulu to be like made fun of in front of the audience. But Nimoy was like, no, do this, and the audience will cheer for Sulu. They're not gonna laugh at you. They're gonna cheer for you.
My
And-
only complaint is that the Starfleet we all see, but we can say it is just he is tall, and we're projecting 20th century values onto a 23rd century.
I guess he
story.
is the triad of douchebags in there. There's Mr. Adventure, there's Don't Call Me Tiny guy, and then there's Styles himself.
Yes.
My only complaint with this part of the movie of them, getting the band back together and stealing the Enterprise, sabotaging the Excelsior, Don't Call Me Tiny, how many fingers am I holding up, all that stuff. I love it, and it all works so much. And then I remember how after Uhura has her big moment with Mr. Adventure, they ignore her until the end of the movie.
Yep.
And that's frustrating that, like, oh, we're going to leave the chick behind.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a shame.
She does get a little more to do in the novel, but not a lot. But in that she goes and jams up all of Starfleet's communications network, so they can't send any other ship except the ships at space dock after them. But
and I wish they would have mentioned that in the movie or something.
Yeah, that certainly wouldn't have hurt none.
Yeah, I feel like there's little doubt that it had something to do with just a little bit of that old 80s entrenched sexism. Just if you're going to leave somebody
Michelle
behind...
Nichols originally just thumbed through the script to see how many scenes she was in, and then called up Nimoy and said, "I'm not going to do it." And he's like, "Why?" "Well, I'm in hardly any scenes." And he's like, "Did you read your scenes?" He's like, "All right, I'll read my scenes, but I don't think I'm going to do it." And then she calls back, "Okay, I'm in." You actually gave me something fun to do besides hailing frequencies.
So, do you want to talk about Kruge and the Klingons and their role in the movie and how we're introduced to the Klingon bird of prey?
Right, the first appearance of a ship that will come to be used many, many times.
Yes.
Like every model built in this movie, we'll see a lot of it.
It's almost like they're reusing.
You don't see too much of the Merchantman freighter at
That's
the
true.
beginning.
But
I think it is still recycled a few times.
Yes.
I will say, I love that scene when it first appears. What is it? Valkyris is a little cheesy in her super cleavage.
Yeah.
Okay, but this is why I love the Merchantman ship and everyone on it, including Valkyris, because to me that fits so well into the original series aesthetics. Like the interior of that ship, the look of the crew, their wardrobe, Valkyris's wardrobe, even though she has like the kind of the newer Klingon makeup on her forehead, the purple lighting, the crates in the background with like a net over them.
Was that like a deliberate decision?
I don't think so. 'Cause they light some of the Klingon bird of prey interiors.
The bar,
with purple lights.
Bar with Genesis also looks a little bit TOS. I think in that sense, I feel like they're very heightened lighting.
My hunch is in both cases it was the same reason that TOS looked like TOS. We have limited money and we want to spend it elsewhere.
Dramatic lighting, simple props.
Yeah. How do we make this really crappy set look good? Colored lights.
And that's a big part of my fondness for this movie is that it's the first movie that really feels in sync with the original series.
Yes. Despite breaking so many original series rules, like, killing off people and just
blowing up the fucking
Enterprise.
ship.
Yeah. But yes, there's definitely credit and acknowledgement of that series.
Like in '79, we got like Star Trek the motion picture, but to me, like this feels like Star Trek the movie.
Yeah.
Or like Star Trek the original series, the movie.
Yeah. No, I would agree with that. Certainly closer than anything that had come before.
General thoughts from you guys on the Bird of Prey as a design?
I love it. It's gorgeous.
It's very cool.
Definitely the best Klingon ship.
Wings down or up?
Up is cooler.
I still prefer the D7, but they needed like a smaller scout class ship for this movie, and especially for the next movie. Yeah. So the Bird of Prey that they created and used works out really well. But cool thing is they initially wanted that to be a Romulan ship. They were going to have Romulans as the bad guys.
Hence giving it a Romulan name.
Yeah, and a cloaking device.
And bird print on the underside of the wings.
And so then it was going to be a Romulan ship that a Klingon stole.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then just eventually became a Klingon ship.
Right.
But,
yeah, they kept trimming it back, so yeah.
This is a small thing, but something that I liked is when it first appears over the merchant ship. I believe it's just part of the soundtrack and not actually like a sound effect. But there's this kind of clanging bell thing, like a proximity alarm, and it's because it's so giant compared to that merchant ship. I don't know. Somehow it just heightens that scene. In addition to cool James Horner music.
Yeah, and his music it's original content, but it is in the same kind of aesthetics is what Jerry Goldsmith did for the Klingon music
That's
in
right.
the motion picture.
That's right. It has a little bit of that sort of drum-like tribal quality.
Yeah, and we mentioned that a couple of weeks ago, how that music would later be used to, if not use the exact same music, they would use something very much inspired by it for the Klingons.
Mm.
And I guess you learn pretty quickly that they will need to be taken seriously if they'll blow up one of their own people and just trash a ship like that.
Yeah. So, what do you think about Kruge as the villain of the piece?
They should have made John Larroquette the villain and had Kruge be a sidekick. No.
John Larroquette played Maltz.
Yeah.
Who was also in Night Court with Brent Spiner, who of course will become Data.
Yeah.
And he was he was in Twilight Zone recently. He was in Twilight Zone a couple weeks ago. The new
nice.
Twilight Zone on CBS All Access.
When was John Larroquette a Klingon?
He was one of the Klingons on the Bird of Prey in Star Trek 3.
Really?
He's the one who lives. He's the one at the end who
did
will,
not know
I'll
that.
tell you later. No, I'm not.
I was like, what is he talking about? I thought this was in like some Star Trek Yet to See.
No.
Wow. I don't know if I've ever known that.
So only 80
I only knew it
sitcoms.
because I read it, but yeah.
That's cool though.
But I will say that Christopher Lloyd delivers a great performance. It's not Ricardo Montalban, but it is certainly satisfactory to what it is required to be.
It's as big. I don't know if it doesn't have like quite the weight, but it's as big.
But
it's as big as it is.
Here's why that works for me, because they're not trying to make him as big and important as Khan.
Yeah.
No.
Because the entire point of the Wrath of Khan, like our hero's objective in that movie is to survive Khan.
Yeah.
It's kind of structured more like a horror movie, or even what we see a lot with James Bond movies or superhero movies or anything that's like a big like supervillain who has like a plan or a scheme or something, and in like the traditional sense of a protagonist, the villain is kind of like the protagonist, and the hero is like the antagonist who's trying to stop the proactive player from doing what their goal is. But what I like about Star Trek 3 is that the actual heroes are the actual protagonists. You know, their goal is to get Spock, and Kruge is just there to be a problem for them.
Yeah.
And that's all that he's really played up as. And they give him a lot of really fun, villainous stuff to do.
You should take the Vulcan. No. Why? Because it pleases you.
No, because you wish it.
Because you wish it.
That's another line I quote from this movie all the time. If I'm ever trying to like just be a dick about something, somebody's like, why are you going to do that? Or why won't you do that? And I'll just say, because you wish it.
Yeah.
So he gets a bunch of great lines, and he's pretty sly. You know, when he in the Enterprise have their first exchange, which, by the way, slightly riffs on Khan's approach to in Wrath of Khan. But this time they don't get caught with their pants down. Yeah. But they are not running at combat readiness, so it of course ends up more of an even match. But Kruge is pretty sly throughout most of that. He definitely works with his smaller scout ship as best he can. And it does occur to me that some of the worst damage ever done to the Federation is by small ships. The Reliant, the Bird of Prey here, and don't the Klingon sisters in
Star Trek Generations take down a Galaxy class with a old Bird of Prey, which is really stupid and hacky writing and a total contrivance.
We're getting ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, we'll get to that movie soon enough.
Yes.
But I'm just saying, small ships bring down enterprises.
Yeah. Well, and I think the other thing about him is there's something. He's very Klingon. He's very like you can almost see like he's very ambitious, like trying to like better his stuff. He's like obviously it's funny because like Starfleet views like Genesis as a failure because it's like it didn't work to create a new planet's lifeline. And he's like, what does he say? Like ultimate power or something like that. He's like, it's like if we get this, I'm gonna be like one of the head Klingons here.
Yeah. He keeps.
To him, a Genesis is a success.
Yeah, he's like,
planets. This is a win.
Yeah, it's like the equivalent of the Death Star and the other Star franchise.
Yeah. No, so I thought it was good. He's almost like kind of like a small time guy trying to do better, trying to work his way up.
He does do. You know how I talked about in the Wrath of Khan one, how Khan kind of does what you don't always see villains do, which is like he does the torture the instant he catches him, basically, and gets his information. Kruge also does something a little unusual for villains, which is that he doesn't lock up his captives. He does actually kill one of them to show his threat right away.
Yeah.
And it's not a nobody. It's not some random NPC. It's a pretty notable character.
Then, well, let's talk about Sarek and David.
Okay.
Well, I do want to say Esteban.
Yeah,
everyone says Esteban is a wet blanket and
he
way
sucks.
too
he's
Go
terrible.
Apply Esteban to almost most of the original series episodes, and you will see that Esteban does not get his crew killed. Maybe he doesn't save everyone on the planet, but Esteban would have kept his crew alive way better than Kirk did throughout the 60s Star Trek because of his adherence to these little protocols and rules.
How did that work out for him here?
So somebody else came and blew him up. With a cloaked ship, he got sucker punched.
He couldn't have planned for that.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no way you can say that's his fault.
Here's why I don't like JT Esteban is because they make him look like such a pathetic captain.
He is supposed to look pathetic, but if you look at what he actually does, it would have saved a lot of lives in the Kirk's 5-year mission.
I think that's silly. I think you could just as easily say that he wouldn't have been able to save the day as many times as Kirk.
Well, I don't know if he would have saved the day, but he would have saved his crew.
Well, that's not you don't sign up for Starfleet to be saved.
Fair enough. Risk is our business and all that. But
exactly.
But he would have saved. I think we have to give him some points for that. No one ever gives him any points for that.
I liked Esteban. I don't feel he was wildly pathetic. I did like when they said they found Spock. I think it's when they said he's found Spock that he's he reacts about the smuggler when he gets busted. He's like,
well, he asked at one point he asked David and Sarek, well, what do you think we should do? But
he's clearly
he wants to find out if they've been taken over by some mind-altering thing.
Can you imagine? The Genesis planet is the biggest political firestorm going on right now, and this guy is the guy that's right in the thick of it. One wrong step, and he's probably he could start a war.
But that's what a Starfleet captain should be able to go in and handle. Yeah.
And the novelization actually states he was picked because he always follows the book. That's why they wanted him there.
I hate Esteban because they make him look so lame in order to make Kirk look like the cool badass captain who can always get it done.
But it also seems very plausible that they would assign somebody to that to a science vessel, and they would assign that particular science vessel to this sort of situation.
I don't like the idea that there's people like that in Starfleet. I don't, instead of having
after
Kirk,
all the bad apples we've had in Starfleet, this is the one you can't stand.
Instead of having our main heroes. Instead of having Kirk be the only really successful captain who can make decisions on his own and outsmart the villains and figure out the right thing to do in a murky situation.
But that's not what you do in a 2-hour movie.
I know, but I don't like the idea of Kirk being the only cool captain in Starfleet.
If you want to rag on Esteban being an asshole, I'm all right there with you. But actually, I think not Esteban. I mean Styles being an asshole, but Esteban I think gets a bad rap.
I'm glad JT Esteban got blown up.
So, Father, real quick, what were his major flaws? What did he do wrong?
I just don't like him. I think. I don't like him being indecisive, incompetent, impotent, lame ass.
Well, here's the thing. Did he he didn't know? He didn't know, of course, what was going on. So he was okay, they found this weird thing on the Genesis planet. He says, "Don't beam up. We got to quarantine you for it right now." Does he really do much beyond that?
He says he wants to check with Starfleet before
several times.
But I think that was also a kind of a stalling tactic because he honestly believed they might have been possessed or mind controlled by something on the planet because what they're saying is crazy bullshit.
That's a stretch to.
And normally I might say, that's a bit of a stretch. But how many times in the original series did one of the crew members get possessed, and oh no, beam on down. It's great down here, sir. That happened all the time.
Esteban had watched the show.
Yes.
He read the logs.
Yes.
The reason they wrote him the way that they wrote him is because there's this widespread idea that Kirk is the best of the best Starfleet captain and everyone else kind of sucks. And I don't like that. I want there to be other cool badasses
I tend to
Starfleet.
Agree with you. I just don't think that Esteban, just because Esteban is not one of those badasses.
Yeah, I don't know if he deserves to die, Father.
Yeah.
But I appreciate
it's your podcast, so I'm going to let you have the last word on this topic and move on.
It is kind of cool how we see Kruge react to the Grissom accidentally being destroyed.
Oh, yeah.
When he disintegrates the gunner.
And there's only 12 people on that ship, so that's like a significant portion of the crew. He just
Yeah.
Well, but think of the money they're going to save now.
Yeah.
Immediately after that, when he points the gun at Torg and he says, "Say the wrong thing, Torg.
Yeah.
Just give me a reason to shoot someone else."
The thing that cracks me up, of course, is when he tells the guy later on, "Just target the engines."
Yeah, yeah.
And with
Engines
all the
only. Understood? Understood.
But maybe the most important thing about that scene for me is how cool and painful looking the Klingon disruption is on Kill.
Oh, yes.
It's I think the first time we'd seen.
They had
definitely the
disintegration in the original series,
Yeah.
right? But it, rarely that took quite that long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems the bigger budget Star Trek gets, the more they're afraid of doing full body disintegrations. But as this movie shows, they are kind of horrific.
They brought it back in Discovery.
Yeah, but not.
There was like halfway through the 90s, they kind of like decided like, yeah, we're not gonna do disintegrations anymore in Star Trek. But then they brought it back in season 4 of Enterprise, and it looked really cool and scary and powerful.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Oh my god, that's so deadly. And they've done it a few times
And
since then.
I was like, why are the JJ films not showing off how amazing these weapons can be? That seems like exactly the sort of flash that JJ Abrams would love. He could even have lens flare all over the place. So
when we do have that confrontation of like the Bird of Prey versus the Enterprise, I've heard people complain about this movie about how it doesn't make sense that Kruge would attack a Constitution class ship. Like there's no reason to believe that he could take them down with
if he got a good sucker punch in at the first thing,
Right, before
usually.
shields are up.
And he just accidentally blew up a Federation ship, so he's probably thinking like, well, I need like a bigger, sturdier target.
Yeah.
So I've always kind of dismissed that criticism.
No, I think that's plausible for somebody like him to go ahead with that and take that chance.
Cool there was the cat and mouse game between Kirk and Kruge when the Enterprise was onto the cloaked ship before anyone on the Bird of Prey knew that.
Yeah,
they would have been aware of them.
Yeah, the
And
novelization specifies it was Kruge beaming up that caused the disruption in the cloak that Sulu spotted.
Nice.
That was the key flaw was Kruge beaming up to the cloaked ship.
Kruge is under he would be under the impression that there's 400 or 500 people on that ship.
Yeah. 500 according to Probert.
And then you have like the poker game where I love that shot when Kirk when he hails the Bird of Prey, and the Klingons are like, well, why don't they just finish us off? Like they outgun us, and Kirk has to act like he's got like a fully crewed, fully powered ship. But when the view screen turns on and Kirk has his back to the camera and then he turns around dramatically, and it's kind of silly, but like this is the guy who like screamed Khan to like to sell it to Khan that like, oh no, like you trapped me here, and he's trying to bluff.
Yeah.
And I love that exchange between them.
No, it's great. The whole sequence is great.
I like that this felt like a Kirk who had learned from the events of Wrath of Khan, had kind of gotten back on his game, and was able to find dangers before they hit him, but just was in a situation that was a really tough situation.
Yeah.
And when Kruge addresses him and he says, Kirk, this is your opponent. I love the way that like how he viewed it. It's it's all a chess game to him.
Yeah.
Right. And he definitely held himself in a high esteem.
And it is so cool when he says, to prove I mean business, I'm going to kill one of the hostages. And then he tells his crewmen, execute one of them. I don't care which one. Like, he's that, callous about it. Just, I don't care which one. But
it definitely raises the stakes in a way that you don't see in most movies, that they kill off a character that we become attached to from a previous film.
Right, and that you might assume...
simple, that quick, not a big
that you
dramatic
might assume
death.
is safe.
Yeah.
So we should talk about Sarek and David and them being on the planet and them finding, kid Spock.
Yeah.
Before they're captured.
The two of them having a budding romance in the novel is forever imprinted in my head when I watch this movie. Even though
see
it's
no
not
evidence of that.
No, it's not in the film, but it is still how I view it because I've read the novelization.
Yeah, I read that same novelization and really liked it.
And Savick going off everyone says, "Oh, she plays at full Vulcan," but when she goes off on David, how many people have paid the price for your lack of foresight? Like, you're just mad. David didn't. Yes, he screwed up the formula for Genesis, but none of this would have happened. He had no control over Khan. He had no control over these Klingons. He had no response. None of this is actually his fault. You're just angry and hurt that basically he lied to you and that Spock is dead. Your mentor is dead, and now you find out that in a sense, if David had played by the rules, then maybe Spock would still be here. And I like that scene.
Robin Curtis gets a lot of shit. For not being as good of a Savick as Kirstie Alley.
Yeah. I like her.
She definitely does play it more traditional Vulcan. Yeah. But that was the direction she received from Nimoy.
Yeah.
Right. Not an actress problem, but it's the direction they chose.
And I absolutely would have loved to see more Robin Curtis going forward in all the films. But
Ryan, am I right? In the books, when David dies, she freaks out on the Klingons, kicks some ass on them, and they have to I think they have to stun her 3 times before she goes down.
I don't think so. I don't remember that.
Let's look into this because I'm pretty sure that was
remember they get into her head and she's coming up with the kill one. I don't know which, and she knows what that order was because she knows Klingon or something. So she's getting ready, and she's going to jump that Klingon and try to and steal take his knife and get his disruptor and try to hold everyone off and hope that David and Spock get away. And she's got this big, I'm going to die in this huge fight. And then David does his thing and gets killed, and she's like, oh well.
It's possible. Maybe that's what I was
really
thinking.
cool in the novel. She had this whole battle plan worked out, and she didn't get to do it.
By the way, the Klingon knife. The first time we see the duck tab.
Ah, yes.
Oh yeah,
which is a great weapon.
Pretty vicious.
Yeah, another piece of prop that will continue to resonate through the show.
And not only did they get the Klingon culture and personality and ships right in this movie and set a trend for the rest of Star Trek, but also their weapons, their armor.
Yeah.
The
armor was basically TMP armor.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But they do make some modifications to it.
Yeah.
It does when you're watching it here, it does look more next generation than any of the Klingon stuff in the motion picture.
It's tweaked. But they clearly recycled for the extras. I think I bet you only Kruge got a new set of armor, and everyone else was old costumes. I bet you.
I did like the David and Savik's adventure and the weird one cell bacteria or whatever grown to leeches, and then later in a kind of pulp sci-fi kind of fun way into those giant worms that Kruge just crushes without thinking twice about it.
It does all feel like
kid.
What we think of classic Star Trek. Exploring a planet, finding strange new life, figuring science stuff out.
I will say this, although the notion that Spock is linked to the life cycle of the planet is a little crazy, I feel that for the purposes of the movie, it's kind of so crazy it just might work kind of thing.
Yeah, and they don't get into any details.
That's probably wise.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of Spock's resurrection is about almost as magical as anything that happens with the Pa race in Deep Space Nine. Well, we think the planet might have regenerated it. That's everything else might as well just be supernatural. The
idea of a torpedo that you shoot at a dead moon and then it makes oceans and plants and everything appear on it. That in itself is pretty magical.
But they did at least make a whole video presentation about how this was actually science, even if they never really...
Even if it was
science. CG makes it real.
Even if that's not how terraforming will ever work.
Yeah.
But
that's how Genesis works.
I do think this is one of the most mystical and magical Star Treks out there in compare, where we really lean into the magic level in a way that we don't see mostly.
We have Spock kind of reintroduced as a feral child.
Yep.
Yes.
And he does a lot of screaming.
He does. He's very good.
Actually, I do think the actor did a good job of portraying pain. He looks like he has the worst migraine of all time.
Actor? Because they went through a few.
But honestly, they all did a good job.
Yeah. I liked all of them.
So Spock is supposed to be 17 when he enters into the Pon farr in this movie, and I do really think if they had Kirstie Alley in here instead of Robin Curtis, that scene would have come off a lot different. Just because Kirstie Alley had a certain air of sexiness to her in The Wrath of Khan.
Do you really think you wanted more sexiness?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. You're right, it would be different, but is that really what we wanted?
No, I thought you were going to say she seemed a little more human.
I think it would be even more awkward.
Okay. Yeah.
Than the way that Robin Curtis plays it.
So even though I think, just real quick, as a kid, I did not get interpret that they had sex. It just didn't.
Well, that was intentional.
Right.
So the kids would get one thing out of it, adults
I knew
would
what
get another.
Ponfar was vaguely. I remember from the episode, but I didn't specifically think of that. And I thought they did a good job of showing essentially her talking him down, connecting with him, was how I interpreted it. And I thought she did a good job with the scene, even if it's not quite how Kirstie Alley would have done it.
But in that case, I think it actually works better that they had Robin Curtis.
Yeah. I think your point that a little bit of emotional detachment was probably good, so it didn't skeeve people out too much.
Kirstie Alley said she had a crush on Leonard Spock back when she watched the show as a kid. So.
Just like her little brief flirtation with Kirk in the turbo shaft in The Wrath of Khan. Mm-hmm. I don't know, the way that she plays that. Where is kind of like the reserved cold chick, but just a slight bit of cock tease in there.
She was the sexy librarian for a minute.
Yeah, I think that would have been really weird with teenage Spock on Planet Genesis. But
let's get to David's death.
Yeah, the Shatner reaction.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's one of my favorite bits of Shatner acting. I mean, some people hate it, but I think it's great.
Oh, really?
Do people just find it's too much?
I've heard people complain that it's hammy Shatner overacting.
I think the line is comes off as a little stilted. The Klingon bastards, you killed my son. But I love him not able to sit in the chair when he falls.
He's in shock. He's in shock.
I remember I had trouble putting sentences together right after I saw 9/11. The moment after it had. So, I was talking a bit robot-like. So
I do think people saying that, thinking that it's just innately unrealistic that someone might say something like that, people are too different in their reactions to make those kind of judgments, I think.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think it's some of Shatner's best acting. It feels real to me, actually.
Now, there's a couple of moments in the movie where I think it does come off as a little bit too dry, and I kind of wish it had a little bit of that TOS-style melodrama. Mm-hmm. That whole, hostage execution sequence has, no music, and it's kind of weird for Horner's score to be muted like that. And I almost kind of think that maybe when Kirk has his reaction, maybe the music should have came in and hit hard or something.
Oh, I like sometimes silent reactions. I think it's sometimes important.
I don't think Shatner needed some music, but I do think the actual death might have. It feels weird.
Yeah.
Without that music, you don't know what.
It feels real. You're watching this all play out in real time.
Yeah, and I guess that's what they're trying for is such brutal realism. There's not even a soundtrack.
It's filmed a little more cinema verite style, but I do think that's what they were going for.
And then we have Kirk still manages to keep his composure and keep his shit together and outsmart the villain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we have the cool little switcheroo where they beam down to the planet while the Klingons beam on. And it doesn't spoon feed you what they're doing. There's no scene where they explain, we're going to set the self-destruct, we're going to secretly beam down when they beam aboard. You just kind of have to watch it and know enough about the Star Trek technology and piece together what they're doing. It's not anything too complicated, but it's weird that they don't spoon feed it to a general audience. I kind of like it the way that it unfolds.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do too.
The Klingon beam aboard thing and no one's talking but the computer is a great payback scene. It reminds me, tonally at least, of the scene in Wrath of Khan where they get the prefix code, the Here It Comes scene. It's a very different scene, and it's it does seem crazy that they sacrifice the Enterprise to just take out these guys, but in the moment it makes sense.
What else are you gonna do?
What else are you gonna do? And like you said, the way they stage it is such that I think you're watching it and you're probably starting to get it the first time you see it, but your mind doesn't crystallize that this is really gonna happen until Kruge is get out of there!
Oh, yeah.
And that part always made me laugh as a kid. When the Klingons don't know what the ticking clock counting down on the screen
I never saw that as funny. I thought it was dramatic.
That's a weird thing.
I was excited.
That always made me...
It's gonna go. It's going!
That would make me laugh hysterically when Kruge is get out of there! And then you see the Klingons start blowing up. But then after that, it is sad when you do see the Enterprise saucer on fire.
Yeah.
So the ship being destroyed, sad. Klingons losing their lives, hysterical.
Yes. That was Kid Fatheree watching this movie.
I do feel the explosions on the bridge are pretty, like, it feels like righteous payback in an action movie.
Yeah.
They get blown to pieces, but then there's the reminder that the ship is going with it, so you get that pretty notable scene of, like, what looks like acid dissolving it, or whatever it is. And I don't think anybody could have predicted that the whole saucer section would just detonate like that.
Yeah.
That was like Belloc's head.
I believe Scotty's Guide to the Enterprise says that, that destruct sequence ejects all the antimatter pods and then detonates explosives scattered throughout all the ship that have been carefully planted for that. All those exploding consoles, that's what they're there
when they entered the self-destruct codes, they reused the scene from Let That Be Your Last Battlefield in the original series.
And so they had the Admiral, who wasn't captain of the ship, entering the codes. They had Chekhov, who's first officer of Reliant, entering the codes. And then they had Scotty, who has been transferred to a different ship, but I guess his codes are still good. And yet Sulu and Uhura, who were assigned to that ship, and Uhura or Sulu might have been the first officers. Might have even been the first officers on that ship. They're not there for this.
Yeah, apparently, like, any 3 Starfleet officers can blow up.
I'm sure that miracle worker, Mr. Scott, set it up just in case.
Yeah.
That's part of his. What did he say at the beginning of the movie? He's like
the automator.
The automator. He automated it.
Yeah. He is.
I have a vital question for everybody. Did people cry when the Enterprise?
I told you, I cried for days when the Enterprise died when I first saw this movie. For days I was bummed.
I didn't cry the first time I watched this, but I do cry sometimes when I'm watching it now. I think last night when I rewatched this, I cried a good bit.
There's some great James Horner music and the kind of the swell of it all, and as they watch it go down.
Yeah. And you get that great line, "What have I done?" And what you always do, Jim.
It's one of the many,
when you turn death into a fighting chance
for life. That is one of the best favorite Star Trek moments in all of Star Trek.
Probably the best line in this movie.
Chris, tears or no?
Oh, I'm probably misty-eyed. I don't know if I quite had the tears.
Just checking. That counts. That counts. I think I've mentioned this maybe in another podcast, but the role-playing game supplements my brother had, I think, for the FASA game, for Trek 2 and 3, liberally sprinkled the chapter breaks with quotes from these, and they picked a lot of quotes like that, iconic Kirk quotes, and the McCoy Kirk exchange there. And I always thought that, to me, like, in a lot of ways, those really embodied Trek. But it was kind of hammered home by this RPG supplement.
Yes. I will say that I like the idea of spending a whole movie to bring Spock back to life. That is, if you're going to do something like that and make it credible, you need to make it cost. You need to have the heroes need to suffer. There need to be sacrifices made. It needs to seem hard and tricky, and you need to
not
it needs
an
to
everyday thing.
Yes. If you're going to just do, and it's always dumb to bring somebody back to life after you kill them anyway. But if you have to do it, this is the way to do it. And I think I applaud them for not just having him come back at the end of the first act.
In a lot of ways, this movie is like the Khan hangover. And I love that because it makes Khan into even like more of the big badass. Yeah. When it takes really the next 2 movies to recover from the damage he's inflicted.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's another reason why I don't really fault Kruge too much in this movie for not living up to Khan, because I never feel like that's his role in the movie.
Yeah.
But I do love the big showdown with him and Kirk, because it does feel like something out of the original series when a lot of episodes ended with Kirk getting in a fist fight with someone.
Yes, and he actually gets to fight this guy, unlike Khan. Yeah. Not getting to fight Khan.
Exhilarating, isn't it?
Yes.
And I love a lot of the Kruge lines here when what you mentioned earlier about like not wanting to beam up the Vulcan and
right
because you wish it, or perfect, then that's the way it shall be, when Kirk tells them then we're both gonna die.
Yeah. There's definitely an effort. Every time there was a point where you could have taken the more predictable route, they said, what can we do to give this a little more punch, to make this a little more fresh? Exhilarating, isn't it? Is not what you're expecting the villain to say. Yeah.
But this guy who redefines how Klingons will be played for ages after this.
Yeah.
And brings this like mad joy to the role of the villain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If this has to be a level on the Star Trek fighting game when they make one, the blowing up Genesis planet. But I love when he catches Kirk's foot in a kick and flips him over.
yes.
Or the stuntman's foot. But
But look, it looks good. That's the important thing. Is the
It's
effect
still
is good.
Kirk. It may not be Shatner, but it is Kirk.
Yeah.
It's Kirk.
And they do the whole time he does feel like he's stronger than Kirk, so they don't try to make Kirk this badass who can beat up the strong Klingons.
Kirk's just driven by rage.
And he kicks him in the groin, but after watching Discovery, I now know that Kruge had 2 dicks that got kicked by Kirk instead of just one.
You know what I like about that dick kick, which I don't say too often on the show, but not played for a joke. He just does it and it hurts.
Yeah.
And then the fight keeps going
It's
because
like a real fight. It's like a real street fight.
Yeah, these Klingons are not messing around. Oh, real quick rewind of about seriousness. You know when Styles is chasing him and he's like, Kirk, he last communicate. He's like, if you do this, you'll never,
Never sit in that chair again.
Sit in the
Right
captain's
after
chair
we
again.
had 2 movies all about how much Kirk needs to be in that chair and how much he wants that more than anything.
Yeah.
But what I like about that is Kirk, and even though there is a lot of crowd-pleasing scenes right before that, Kirk doesn't engage in banter with him. He just says, warp speed or whatever, and they just, bam, out of
He
there.
only does the banter here when it's tactical. When he's trying to talk shit to his enemy, he knows I got to get that ship. I need that guy to beam us up, or I need him to beam down here and fight me.
Right.
And the whole time when Spock is unconscious on the ground, face down, that must have been when the Spock face had aged to Ethan Peck. And then later, a young Leonard Nimoy, TOS era Leonard Nimoy.
There must be some Zachary Quinto in there somewhere.
Yeah, I'm sure those scenes are just on the cutting room floor somewhere.
It is really good timing how they get off the planet and stop his aging right when he's lined up to contemporary Nimoy.
It's also possible that it was just going to sync up with what the age of the body was at the time, too, and was always going to stop.
Oh, yeah, that's possible.
The novelization says he will die with the planet if he doesn't get away, but that's not said in the movie, I don't think. Is it?
Then
we'd all die. They'd all die.
Yeah, but Spock specifically, I think, would have continued to age and to eventual death.
Fire would have started shooting out of him. Rocks would just pop out. The trees would fall.
But then we do have the final scene on planet Vulcan and the ceremony there.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a really good denouement. They after as much energy is packed into the kind of those last few scenes. And by the way, the Genesis planet blowing up, the way they film it, you don't actually see the full planet explosion, but you see what looks like a solar flare, this massive or lava ejection that would be 1,000 miles wide or something.
Yeah, yes.
And you're well, that's probably it. But I actually like the kind of slight understatement of just not doing the usual fan wang shot of an explotion.
Yeah. We don't see Alderaan blow up.
It's so charged to just see this portion of it, and it just looks like it's just utterly detonating. But after that, I think it's kind of cool to have this quieter scene that's, where you kind of get to reflect on it. And McCoy, is that when McCoy gets his scene about he's like, I don't think I can lose you again?
Yeah. It's when they're on their way back to Vulcan, when he does confess to Spock. And anyone who's watched the original series, you needed this moment. This exchange needed to happen between McCoy and Spock at some point.
You need to know that beneath the kind of bitter words sometimes is some love.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially for casual viewers who might not be clued into that whole relationship.
He called him a bastard earlier.
Yeah.
It's the only other time I can think of where McCoy deliberately showed affection and respect for Spock was in Amok Time, when Spock's hey, I need 2 friends to come to my wedding, or whatever he says, and McCoy says, "Sir, it would be my honor."
Right.
Which is the only time I believe McCoy ever calls Spock sir.
Interesting.
But yeah, and then we get to see Sarek back on the planet, and I think a lot of people forget this is only the second time we've seen Sarek. He really didn't appear in that many...
the cartoon.
The second time in live action that Sarek shows up, he really didn't appear that much. He was only in 1 episode in the original series, and then he appears in some of the movies, and he's in 2 TNG episodes. And that was it of Mark Leonard as Sarek, but a very iconic role.
Yeah, he's so commanding, he casts a strong shadow over the movie in a way.
Yeah, so much that they brought him back in JJ Trek or Kelvin Trek and in Discovery too. They keep going back to him just because of that performance.
But he has that cool line that his logic is uncertain where his son is concerned.
That was awesome.
So, which, from just seeing the original series and the animated series, if you want to throw that in, and then this movie, it's really the first time they really confirm his love for his son.
Yeah. No, I really like that because if you're up on the character and Vulcans in general, you realize what a big deal it is for him to say that, especially to these people.
Yeah, I mean, he always disapproved of Starfleet, and this is the first time you see him connect with Kirk and those guys on a personal level.
They acknowledge that more in Star Trek 4. We're going to talk about that next week. Mm-hmm. But yeah, does anyone else have any thoughts on that ending of when Spock is finally restored? And
I think they handled it perfectly as far as we didn't want him sitting up and tap dancing. It has to be light, it has to be delicate, it has to be eased in, and that's what we got. Yeah. He doesn't even seem to know them. He just walks right by them, and then he turns around, and I just thought.
What was it he said? He said, "Your name is Jim," or something?
Yeah. Well, he first, for the first thing that comes to his mind is, you have been, or I have been, always shall be your friend. And then I love how the next thing he thinks is ship out of danger. Yeah. Callbacks to Star Trek 2. Yeah. But that was still his concern on some level was oh yeah, I did save the ship, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then after that's oh yeah, your name is Jim, and that's when we know that he's back. And George Takei does that really weird thing where he puts his hand on Spock's chest and smiles out on him.
It's not there's a protocol for these situations. There's no social training for the dead coming back to life.
You know what I like? We talked about the family thing earlier. When he comes, when he's trying to pull things together after the ceremony, he kind of walks and faces each of them in turn, right? And there is that sense of trying to reconnect with a family because that's what they are for sure at that point. But the way they all kind of light up when he says Jim and everything, and they all the movie kind of just pulls back, and you just
Horner
kind of
is
see
playing the TOS music,
right?
He's
It's a really
Alexander
beautiful
Courage
scene.
Score.
I think it's pretty perfect.
And with it ending on the words "and the adventure continues," I think at the time they were trying to connect that back to the motion picture, which ended on "and the human adventure is just beginning." Right? Because I think at the time they were thinking this might be our last Star Trek movie, and so we're going to cap it off as this nice little trilogy, like the other Star franchise just did.
Yeah.
So, but I think that's all we got on Star Trek 3: The Search for Spock. We did have some audience feedback. Dave, do you have anything in the subspace transmissions that we can share?
Let's take a look. All right, so here we have one from from Facebook from Christian Bradley, and he writes, "I like it. It was hard to try to follow up on the brilliance of The Wrath of Khan, but The Search for Spock pulled it off. It's not as brilliant, but it's enjoyable, helps build on important Star Trek lore, and introduces new ships we love. On top of that, we get Christopher Lloyd as a Klingon."
Yeah.
That's, the building on the Trek lore thing reminds me, it's, these movies, they're all connected, and they do have that really unique feel of, is there anything quite like this? I guess the original, Star Wars trilogy, but, what is it that's different about this? I guess it's the fact that this is, one big particular story all around the Genesis device.
The difference is that you had, a TV guy coming from television, and so I think he was kind of more running a show than making a series of individual movies. And that was the Harve Bennett approach to it.
Though it was still pretty arcy for TV of that period.
True,
the TV that Harve Bennett did was probably pretty episodic, and you could rearrange the order of the episodes and hardly notice, Mm-hmm. It's my guess. I haven't really looked at a lot of the shows he did, but I'm guessing that was the case.
But I think he still kind of thought in terms of, setting things up, leaving hooks that we can pull onto later and stuff like that.
Yeah, which I really enjoyed. I'd like to see more of that. For Star Trek Into Darkness, I heard somebody suggest that they, I think it was Confused Matthew, that they should have had a quest for Khan to get the blood. Khan escapes at the end. And that should have been the hook, is Khan. We've got to find Khan to bring Kirk back to life. And I thought, that would have been amazing. And I would love to see more of these kind of hooky kind of endings to my movies.
So, a movie that is really a part 1 of 2.
Stealthily.
I kind of like movies that have a faction and like seeing the end of it. But I mean, I also like The Empire Strikes Back. So
Well, if they were gonna copy Wrath of Khan stealthily, they could also stealth copy Search for Spock as a Search for Kirk.
Yeah.
But I guess they were still figuring that franchise out.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess they were with this one too, though.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the reason why I think I like this more than the Wrath of Khan is because it is so much more of what I want out of a Star Trek movie. We really get to feel the size of Starfleet. We get to see all these cool ships. We get to do the exploration of a new planet. We get to do cool sci-fi spectacle like a planet exploding and two characters fighting in like this hellscape of Armageddon. We have the Klingons are a threat at this time in this universe. So doing something as simple as like going over to this planet, you might have to deal with some Klingon assholes that show up. All that stuff, all those elements tie together. Like Sarek coming in using like the Vulcan side of stuff.
You like the world building stuff, and this had more of that sense of the world of Star Trek, right?
It doesn't have like the perfect script that the Wrath of Khan had. It doesn't have as many memorable beats that occur. But
the direction is honestly not as sharp.
Yeah, it's I wouldn't say amateurish, but I would say like
more workmanlike,
less like just like less expert.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely think Wrath of Khan is the better movie, but I just like this more for a Star Trek movie because it is closer to what I want from Star Trek.
Your favorite Star Trek movie?
I mean, I go back and forth on them a lot. Like maybe I always grew up thinking 4 was my favorite. I really like 6, and I do really like 2. It's definitely, like I said last week, it's just like all 4 of those. I just kind of want to think of like all of them as like a 4-way tie for my favorite.
Cheap, but I'll accept it.
But I think that's all we got, so we will go ahead and sign off. But we will be back next week to talk about Leonard Nimoy's second Star Trek movie that he got to helm, Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home. So until then,
live long and prosper, y'all.
Thank all of you so much for checking out this installment of Tex-Trek. I hope you enjoyed it. Please be sure to like our YouTube videos and subscribe to our channel. Audio-only version of episodes are available at our website, www.tex-trek.com. Please check out our site, especially if you just want an audio-only podcast. We have that available for you. Y'all can also keep up with us online. You can follow us on Twitter at TXTrek, or you can check us out on Facebook at www.facebook.com/tex-trek. Please, by all means, let us know what you think by dropping a comment anywhere you see fit. We definitely want to hear your feedback. Let us know what you liked and what you would like to see more of, what you would like to see differently going forward. If you want to email me directly, go ahead. I can be reached at fathereeactual@tex-trek.com. Thank all y'all again. Take care.